welcome. This is from Calling All Beings. This episode was uploaded just a few days ago. It was a live stream with the Glarer. Let's see what they have to say.
And they actually should be treating Karen Reed with the same embrace, but they're not. They're treating her like she's from the planet Pluto or something.
I mean, and they're really reaching, man. Like, I just saw a post where they showed her making a face in a picture.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and they're like, oh my God, no class. Like, I mean, you can't make a silly face in a picture. Like, if I go through your photos on your phone and I don't see a selfie of you making a silly face somewhere in there, I'm going to assume that you are a miserable fuck. Sorry for my language.
It's true.
I'm just going to assume it right away. I'm going to be like, you're miserable and life must suck for you. And I'm going to think that they're more likely to have killed someone than the person who's making a silly face in a picture. You know what I mean?
I had the exact same. I commented on the same photo. It's just so absurd because if that is some indicative of one's class, then I must be classless because I've taken mostly ridiculous photos in my entire life because regular photos don't look so good. And look who's there. Suzanne Cleveland. Let me do my LeBron. Cleveland, this is for you. So anyway, how's it going? Welcome, Suzanne. My homegirl.
It is true that the attacks against Karen Reed are often petty. They're so petty and childish. And again, they are not based on any rational logic or any actual evidence. It's just hatred. Like I've said, I will keep saying it, that the Karen Reed haters, they are a flock of birds with the same feathers, and their mission is hatred. They're not actually going anywhere. It's a dead end wherever they go. It's a dead end because they're not after the truth, and they are not actually after justice for John O'Keefe because they don't know the facts. And if they did, they would stop hating Karen Reed if they knew the facts.
All right, so this is I had an epiphany, that which I told Suzanne last night. So I'm going to share it with you and get your comments on it. So I'm watching Joe Flipperhead's videos, and basically he posts KP in her interview, and then he posts Allie McCabe, and in that. And so I'm just going to go through this and then get your reaction to it. So in that, you have KP saying to the interviewer, I think it was the one where she and Lindsay.
No, I actually posted that.
Oh, did you post it?
Yeah, I actually, I downloaded the two videos and posted them next to each other on Twitter or on X, whatever.
Julie's calling me out because
Joe Flipperhead might have done it as well. Okay. I'm just saying, I know that I distinctly remember actually going, okay, I'm posting this and these two videos side by side next to each other.
Well, thank you, because that may have been the one. But let me share the epiphanal moment that happened after seeing that. So you have KP saying, as you know, because you posted it, oh, Colin wasn't even in the house when John was there.
Yeah.
And then you had Alan McCabe saying, oh, see, Colin wasn't in the house when John was there.
Right. Almost verbatim on the stand.
Yes. On the stand.
In a murder trial. Yeah.
So I started going through my head and saying, what we need to find here is a motive for murder. And the reason is this. If you have Brian Albert, he fancies himself a fighter or some sort of an amateur boxer. I don't know if he's competed or if he just spars with guys or what. So he obviously.
And I just want to say this is a really good point from DJ to figure out the motive, because law enforcement, that's what they do. They often try to figure out a motive for any interested parties, people they consider suspects. Why would this person want to do this to this person? So figuring out the motive is a key part to pressing charges on someone. So I'm just saying I commend DJ for talking about this.
Obviously, there's a call out in the bar by Brian Higgins, and O'Keefe is thinking to himself, if I don't, and I'm gonna use some colorful language, so I want you to forgive me here, but this would be the language they would use.
Oh, I'm only watching my mouth because of it's your show. Like, I don't censor myself on my show, so.
No, I'm talking to the chat.
I respect other people's channels when I'm on them, and so I try to watch my language.
And bless you, as do I. But I'm saying because we have women in the chat, and I don't like to, curse and mix company and these kinds of things. So O'Keefe is at the bar, and he's thinking, I live in Copland. You have all these different cops that live in Canton. They probably do all kinds of laundry room talk when they're over at Canton PD. And Higgins works there. And if this little bitch calls me out and I don't show up, he's going to tell them that I'm a pussy, that I'm a bitch. If he says, hey, you coming, and I don't at least show my face at Brian Albert's house, he's going to dime me out to all these other Canton PD guys that he called me out.
It is an extremely unfortunate thing. And I know I've touched on this in a past video, the whole macho aspect, ¿quién es más macho? Which in Spanish, it just means who's more macho, who's the bigger guy. And unfortunately, in certain groups of people, and I guess it's probably human nature when it comes to men, men having to be protectors, usually in a tribal setting, protecting the tribe, protecting the women, doing a lot of the hunting and gathering. Like if we go way back, right? It's kind of ingrained in the DNA of all of us. And when it comes to men, unfortunately, there is this competitive mindset in certain groups, not all men and not all groups, but in certain groups, there is this who is more macho competitive mindset. And it is true that if you don't want to be perceived as a pussy or a wimp, then you have to go along. You have to go along with their competition, and you have to prove yourself. You are worse off standing down, unfortunately. And that's part of being street smart too. You don't stand down, and it's the same with being in a prison population. You have to prove yourself, or you will be walked all over. It's just, again, there are certain situations where men in particular have to prove themselves, because if they don't, they are perceived as weak, and then they become the laughing stock. They become the butt of every joke. And in my opinion, as I have said in past videos, Brian Albert absolutely, it seems to me, I have this hunch, and it's nearing certainty at this point, that Brian Albert is an instigator. His actions at the Waterfall Bar and Grill, which were captured on CCTV, they were captured on camera. To me, Brian Albert was absolutely pumping himself up and getting ready for battle mode. And I think he was instigating. I feel like Brian Albert was instigating Brian Higgins, pushing Brian Higgins to be like, you gonna let John O'Keefe do that? You're gonna let John O'Keefe take your woman? Because at this point, when they're at the Waterfall Bar and Grill, it is so clear that Brian Higgins still has expectations about Karen Reed. Just look at how he's texting her. Look at how she completely ignores him because she chose John O'Keefe. At the end of the day, literally at the end of the day, Karen Reed chose John O'Keefe, and she demonstrated that through her actions by completely ignoring Brian Higgins. And I'm telling you guys, Brian Albert must have known. Brian Higgins and Brian Albert have a bromance. I made a really good video about it. They had a bromance, and Brian Albert must have known what Brian Higgins was feeling, whatever suffering Brian Higgins was feeling, being rejected by Karen Reed. And John O'Keefe having a good time and being happy with Karen Reed being so affectionate, and John O'Keefe the same. And this was all on display in front of Brian Higgins. And again, if you're in your ego, if you are a beta male, like I'm telling you, Brian Higgins is, if you are a beta male and you are in your ego, it's gonna fucking hurt. And you're not gonna be able to handle or conduct yourself, because unfortunately, you're just not that mature. You're not that wise. And I'm not making justifications for Brian Higgins, but I am saying he's dumb. He's a dumbass. And it is so clear in his actions. And I feel that there was this primitive element to all this, what happened that night on January 28th into the morning of January 29th. Like there was this primitive Canis Mas Macho shit going on. Brian Albert was instigating it. Brian Higgins was so stupid that he went along with the instigation, and they were all fucking drunk. And we all know how drinking makes all of us stupid. It absolutely does. Drinking makes us stupid. It makes us do things we would not do while we are sober. It's a fact. And so it was a perfect storm of stupidity, macho nonsense. And DJ is on point. He is absolutely on point. That unfortunately, John O'Keefe not being in his right mind, but knowing that he's got to prove himself in this macho community of police officers and people in law enforcement, because if not, what's going to happen to John O'Keefe? The word's going to get back to Canton PD, and it's definitely going to get back to Boston PD, where John O'Keefe works, But again, it's like, as police officers, all of them were playing into something that if you or I as citizens played into, we would all have been held responsible. We would all have been in deep shit. But because Brian Albert was an officer, Brian Higgins was an ATF agent, they had this like entitlement, this arrogance, like, yeah, we're under the color of law. Who the fuck cares? We can do whatever the fuck we want. And they played into this macho game, and John O'Keefe died as a result. And I just feel like if John O'Keefe was a little more sober that night, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe, and again, I'm not making any justifications, but in my heart, I really wish that John O'Keefe never went into that house. I wish Karen Reed never drove him. But at the same time, I get it. These macho games happen all the fucking time. And again, when you're drinking on top of the stupid ass macho games, it's going to get out of hand. Someone's going to get hurt. It's really fucking sad to think about.
I didn't take him up on it. So that's why O'Keefe asked Karen to take him over there, and he was only supposed to be there for a few minutes. Albert overwhelmingly likely brings him down into the basement, because that's where hey, you guys want to have a go? Let's go. Let's go down the basement. See if
that's the scenario that makes the most sense to me as well. I mean, if I'm speculating, I think that's based on the evidence, what we know. Yeah.
But it gets better. It gets better. Because even in them having a fight that is sanctioned by the ringmaster there, Brian Albert, we don't have a motive for murder. So when John is injured, we have to have a reason that they're not going to call 911. There has to be a reason that any normal person, even a drunk cop, these guys are first responders, this guy goes down and is looking like he's convulsing, someone's going to call 911. So what I surmise happened is those injuries that are on the backs of his hands. He's probably engaged with Brian Higgins, and perhaps because of this undying need to clear Colin of even being in the home, why would you be so dead set on that unless Colin takes some sort of a weighted object and smacks him in the back of the head with it, causing that 2.5-inch scar? He's defending himself from the front. He gets hit from the back. Now, the problem we have is if somebody calls 911, John O'Keefe is going to the hospital.
And we don't know if this is true. DJ is providing a scenario. We don't know if this is true. We know that the evidence says that John O'Keefe sustained a fatal basal skull fracture. It was a skull fracture at the bottom rear end of his skull. And it was fatal. And it created multiple fractures throughout his skull. It was a significant impact. To me, it's more likely because, again, there is a wound on John O'Keefe's eyelid, and it's a wound indicative that he had been punched in the face. And I'm saying I feel like John O'Keefe was punched so hard that he fell back onto something, maybe a cement floor in the basement, maybe it was a wall, maybe it was the workout equipment that Brian Albert had in the basement. Maybe John O'Keefe fell onto a dumbbell. Those things are fucking hard. They're solid. Like, we don't know exactly what John O'Keefe hit his head on, but it was severe. It was hard enough. It was hard enough that he would have needed immediate medical attention. And I mean, I get what DJ's saying. And maybe it was a blow to the back of the head. Maybe someone did pick something up and hit him that hard. But I'm saying I feel like it's more likely John was punched, fell backward. The force of the punch, again, and he's drunk. Does he really have control of his motor skills? Does he have control of his body? Doubtful if he's that drunk. So all the more reason why John O'Keefe and all his weight and the force of the punch would cause him to fall onto something hard enough to create that skull fracture that then sort of spiderwebbed across the rest of his skull. Again, it was significant. Whomever, or again, it could have been one person, it could have been multiple people. Whoever gave him that final blow, whoever it was, to me, was an extremely strong person. I don't know. Or they could have all been ganging up on him. It could have been Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, and Colin Albert, and whoever else was down there. They could have all been hitting him left and right. And maybe, that was another cause for the spider webbing of skull fractures throughout his skull. Again, this is all speculation, but it's like, what do we do when the people who were supposed to be investigating this did not conduct a real, legitimate investigation? What do we as onlookers, what are we supposed to do? Just accept the non-investigation? Are we just supposed to accept the fact that there was no investigation? Or do we try to figure it out? Do we try to put the pieces together ourselves? And I commend the people who are trying to put the pieces together themselves. Because that's what needs to happen, because it's clear that nobody in Massachusetts is putting the pieces together. Nobody with any authority to do something about this is putting the pieces together. And again, the feds are taking their sweet ass time, just like they took their sweet ass time in the Sandra Birchmore case.
He's going to the ER, and he's probably going to at least stay one night there. just based on the injury to the back of his head, and if he was concussed, which obviously he would have been. He is now the DA is going to have to prosecute whomever committed felony assault. So if Colin Albert hits him in the back of the head while he's engaged in a fight, and I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know what happened, but I have to establish a motive of why Brian Albert and Brian Higgins would let him die. And It's not just because he's a dick and because Brian Albert is a violent maniac, as Sean McDonough has put out on many occasions. So the DA would be.
I think that's the question that everybody is stuck on. I think the question everybody's stuck on is why didn't anyone help him?
That's why. Because hold on. I want to extend this further, Will, because now you have a situation where the Norfolk County DA is going to have to.
I just want to say, I'm gonna keep letting it play. I know DJ, he's on a train of thought here, and I think it's important that we allow him to finish his train of thought. He's getting somewhere, but I want to say that's not my question. Like, why didn't they help him? That hasn't been my question. I feel like I know why they didn't help John O'Keefe, and it's something extremely evil in all of them, that they all felt that they were more important to each other, the family, the McCabe's, the Alberts, and Higgins, who was considered a family member, even though Brian Albert played down his relationship with Brian Higgins during trial. Brian Higgins did not play down his relationship with Brian Albert, but Brian Albert played down his relationship with Brian Higgins. So Brian Albert is clearly hiding. He's playing things down that were more valuable to him during that time. And again, to me, it was blood. You know how some families, it's like blood's thicker than water. Stupid. Like, it's not true. Like, to me, family can fuck you over just as easily as water, as people you're not related to. So the whole blood is thicker than water shit, to me, is a farce. It's a falsehood. It's a stupid phrase that's not actually true. To me, your family, the true family that you have, are the people who stick by you and are there for you, and love you and accept you, and truly are a support system for you. And they don't necessarily have to be blood related to you. To me, people should pick their family members. We should never be so blind to blindly accept our family members, to the extent that we put up with bullshit, or we put up with abuse, or we put up with mistreatment. I'm saying pick your family. Don't let blood get in the way of who is in your family, because you might remain loyal to some toxic fucking family members who are no good for you just because you're related by blood. And to me, it is so clear that the Alberts and the McCabe's and Higgins, they were all sort of related to each other through this toxic bond, and they absolutely stuck up for each other. They united for each other, and it's likely they are protecting Colin Albert. But what is clearer than any of those theories is that they are protecting each other. I don't have a question as to why they didn't help John O'Keefe. I know why they didn't help John O'Keefe, because they were protecting each other.
Indict this guy for felony assault, which means police officer career for Colin Albert is over. And, having filled out job applications myself in and out of the government, my wife as well, she works and she's a cook. Every single one of them, have you been convicted of a felony? And every one of them is using these national background check services. I can't think of what they're called. Somebody put it in the chat if you remember, but they're using these national background check services. What's up, Dennis? So if that is your motive for murder right there, because his career aspirations are over, because he's going to have to identify himself as a convicted felon without question, not to mention whatever disciplinary action that Brian Higgins would have faced.
That's a compelling argument from DJ, and I commend him for it. That's a compelling argument that if in fact this is all really about Colin Albert, that they're protecting Colin Albert, Chris Albert's son, Chris Albert being the select board member. It's like city council for Canton. That makes a lot of sense to me. That's a motive for murder. Chris Albert having a powerful position in politics in Canton, and having other hookups, having other connections. Chris Albert, Kevin Albert, and Brian Albert all being brothers, and having rather suspicious behavior throughout this, and to me being proven liars. Chris Albert lied and said there was no issue at the Waterfall Bar and Grill, but video camera proved that was a lie. Brian Albert also said there were no issues at the Waterfall Bar and Grill, but video camera proved that was a lie. Both Brian Albert and Chris Albert lied about what issues were happening at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. Brian Albert and Chris Albert are lying. They are hiding something. And I don't know if they are hiding all of this to protect Colin Albert, to protect Colin Albert's future. But it sure as hell is a compelling motive if that's the case. And it makes sense. But again, I don't know. It could have been Colin Albert. It could have been Brian Higgins. It could have, I get that some people are certain that Brian Higgins did this because apparently Brian Higgins' friend, and Brian Higgins himself apparently admitted to speaking with his friend at a bar and told his friend everything that happened to John O'Keefe. I don't know. But then it's like, was it really Brian Higgins? Could Brian Higgins also be covering for Colin Albert? We don't know. But what we do know is that they are lying. They are all proven liars. And Brian Higgins especially was suspicious as fuck with how he destroyed his cell phone in an extremely criminal manner. Okay? Brian Higgins behaved like a gangster the way he destroyed his cell phone. Anyway, I commend DJ for trying to put these pieces together and trying to establish motive.
Obviously, Brian Albert was retirement eligible. I think that's their motive, to let him die. Because if he wakes up, God forbid if O'Keefe wakes up, he is going to ID Colin Albert as who hit him in the back of the head.
Right.
That's all I got.
That's excellent. I've made similar arguments that it is clear. It is so clear that none of them wanted John O'Keefe to survive his injuries. Okay, and again, that answers the question. Why didn't anybody help John O'Keefe? Because none of them wanted him to survive his injuries. It was a group effort. They didn't want him to be able to say who did this to him. And it's not like this has never happened before, guys. Like I have said, if you follow enough crime cases, this happens all the time. People are not saved because of what they can say if they survive. It happens all the time.
It's just, that makes sense, but, to me, based on the facts of the case, Brian Higgins had the most motive. Now, I'm not saying he did it. I'm not even saying I think he did it. I'm saying that if I'm speculating based on the facts that are made available to me, I'm going with Brian Higgins had the most motive. But that also makes sense. That also makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's all kinds of possible motives. There's rumors that Colin Albert is a drug dealer. There's rumors that there was something with Brian Albert and his partner, who was John O'Keefe's partner or something to that effect. I'm not even sure exactly what that is, but there's rumors about this. And the problem is like those things are mostly rumor. Right. So I don't speculate on rumor. So right now, based on the facts that are made available to me, based on the video footage of Brian Higgins peacocking, as Microdots put it in his video, and then looking as though he could have been.
That was excellent, by the way. That Microdots video, in which Microdots goes over the CCT footage, the video footage from the Waterfall Bar and Grill. Brian Higgins is absolutely peacocking. He's absolutely, and I say it as I'm discussing that video. I said it in my own video that they are behaving. Brian Higgins and Brian Albert are behaving as if they are in junior high. Like they're a bunch of teenagers, hormonal teenagers, and they're trying to impress a girl. Like, I know because it's happened to me. I know what it is. I know exactly what they're doing. But what's so disgusting about it is that these are grown ass men behaving like this.
Calling John O'Keefe out.
No question. You've been in a bar fight. You know what that. And
someone on Twitter corrected me. And I if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You know what I mean? It is what it is. So, and somebody on Twitter said, in all fairness, Will, how do you know? You can't hear any audio. You don't really know what's being said. You don't really know. He could just be drunk and talking about something serious, but it doesn't mean he's actually calling him outside to fight. And that's true.
I'm not buying it, man.
No, I get it. And that's a logical thinker. Whoever's thinking that, well, we can't hear the audio from the CCTV footage. So aren't we just all speculating because we can't really hear what they're saying? I get it. That's actually good logic. And I commend whoever said that. However, just watch the whole video. Watch the entire thing. Like, you got to know that what they're doing and their mannerisms is absolutely instigation. Brian Albert is absolutely pumping himself up. He's exerting a lot of energy. And to me, if you're watching that video and not picking up on that, then you're probably not a good judge of character. At some point you have to just look at what you're watching and think about it. Just think it through.
To me, if it walks like a rubber ducky and it quacks like a rubber ducky, it's a rubber ducky. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. I agree with DJ and the Glare. You just, come on, connect the dots. Connect the dots.
Sure.
I've been in enough situations where I have seen that point. I've seen that head movement, that person standing in between. That was a call out for a fight. And then the follow up with the text, because clearly these guys were not friends. And
he did
clearly
follow up with a text, yeah.
And he followed up with a text. You coming? Question mark. So now John has to. And Karen does not. Karen does not know. Yeah, Karen does not know why she's being asked to drive him there. As she said in her interview, she said, "I wasn't invited there. I don't know if you were. I wasn't. I don't know why you want to go there. I want to go home." And he had to go over there. And the reason he had to go over there is because if Higgins called him out for a fight and he doesn't turn up, then there's a problem.
And he's trying to bang his woman.
And he's trying to bang his woman. Yeah.
And he
wants to get some of that.
Like it's just in our DNA.
It's like I said, it is such a primitive display. It is such a primitive display, but it happens all the time. And it's really fucked up. To me, it's so cheap, what Brian Higgins and what Brian Albert were doing. It was so cheap and it was lame as fuck, Like, I wouldn't want anything to do with these people because they're so fucking lame, how low their bar is. It's disgusting. But But again, somebody got hurt. And I think about it. If you think about it, like, I reflect on it, and in a way it makes sense that somebody got hurt because they're fucking primitive. They're idiots.
And hey, man, our testosterone dictates that we, like,
Don't
you
back
call
down,
me
man.
out. You call me out. If I got to take an ass whooping, I'll take an ass whooping. But
That's right.
if you're calling me out, we're gonna throw hands, man. It is what it is.
But at the same time, John O'Keefe was a responsible parental figure to his niece and nephew. John O'Keefe was not reckless, He was trying to create a stable life for his niece and nephew. And he's not reckless in that he had a DD. He wanted Karen Reed to be able to drive him home. I really think that the alcohol prevented John O'Keefe from thinking this through. And unfortunately, he became prey. If anything, I think John O'Keefe was the only one inside 34 Fairview with any brains, with any real maturity. And I have heard people say some really terrible things about John O'Keefe. That he was dumb to do this. And I'm just saying the dude was drinking and he worked for Boston PD, and all those police departments are interconnected. Everybody knows each other. And maybe he felt that if he just showed up, he could have proven that he wasn't afraid. And maybe they weren't expecting him to show up. Maybe they were not expecting John O'Keefe to show up, but he showed up. And then what? And then probably because Brian Albert is an instigator, Brian Higgins and Colin Albert, probably both of them felt like they had to prove themselves to the instigator, Brian Albert. Whatever happened, it definitely happened inside 34 Fairview. And most definitely the McCabe's and the Alberts and Brian Higgins lied to all of us about it. And not only that, they then pinned this shit. They pinned their own bullshit on Karen Reed in a completely innocent party. And some people don't think she's innocent because she was messing around with Brian Higgins behind John O'Keefe's back, but that doesn't make her a murderer. Her not being happy in the relationship with John O'Keefe is her business. And I mean, I feel like I don't know her and I don't talk to Karen Reed, but I feel pretty sure she probably regrets ever fucking texting Brian Higgins. I bet she regrets it. And I'm sure that if she could turn back the hands of time, she would have completely bypassed Brian Higgins. If it would have amounted to this. And of course, I'm not saying this is Karen Reed's fault by any means. I'm not even saying it's John O'Keefe's fault. The people who are at fault are the Alberts and Brian Higgins and the McCabe's and the MSP who helped them cover it up. Michael Proctor especially. They are all fully responsible for what happened to John O'Keefe and for what subsequently happened to Karen Reed. They're trying to lock Karen Reed up, and they're trying to lock Aiden Kearney up. It's like they're just going to try to keep locking everybody up just so they never have to face consequences. And that just goes to show you that they are the real pussies. Brian Albert is a pussy. Brian Higgins is a pussy. They are the real pussies because they want to throw down, but they don't want to fess up. They don't want to own their own fucking actions. And you're not a real man if you can't own your own fucking actions.
And by the way, Sam Nagel, you would never call out Turtle Boy if you two were alone. Never. Just want to say that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, that was the most pathetic display of effery that I've ever seen. Like
that's when you know guy's a real puss, is when he does something like that. That's when you're 100% sure.
Right. And I guarantee you.
Yeah, guys, I am like I said in my previous video, I when I show you guys things and when I'm commenting on things, when I'm reading documents, when I'm showing you guys videos, I watch them with you for the first time. I read them with you for the first time because I want my reaction to be authentic and genuine. And I just got done telling you, like, they're the real pussies. And DJ called them a puss, too. So, on point.
That Ryan Nagel gave him the business in private for that. I guarantee it. Ryan Nagel comes off to me as somebody who doesn't go around picking fights, but will be the first one to throw down if his friends are in trouble. It totally seems that way. I've known guys like him my whole life. I respect guys like him most of the time. The problem is that the people that he's friends with are dirty, bad people, and they're covering up a murder. That's the issue. But the thing is Ryan Nagel, I could tell the way that he chose to handle it was, all right, I'm going to get my brother out of there. I think that when he got in Turtle Boy's face, it was not to confront Turtle Boy. It was to get his brother away. It was to bail his brother out of a situation that his brother wasn't thinking through. So that was his way of doing that, but not looking like he was, it was actually I could see my brother doing this. You know what I mean? Put it that way. Like where I'm running my mouth and getting loud and being Mr. Tough Guy. Instead of embarrassing me, my brother's not going to embarrass me. He's going to go and he's going to say, I'm taking over, blah, 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 blah. And then casually get him. Hey, come on, let's go. Let's leave this idiot alone. Let's go. That's the impression that I got. But yeah, Sam Nagel, I don't think is tough. I think he feels tough because he has a tough brother.
Because he had a whole group of people around him.
Yeah.
If he would have been alone with Turtle Boy, who has said nothing to that guy.
Right.
So Jessica is here, and then we'll go back to my hypothesis. I want to get Jessica's question in. This is Miss Jessica and B.
That's a good point that DJ brings up. Even though they're talking about the Nagels, that's another good point to observe in what happened inside 34 Fairview, in that they were all family. They were all family. And again, Brian Higgins was essentially family with how long he had known Brian Albert and how they behaved like they were brothers. That John O'Keefe was not family, and it became really tribalistic really fast. So he was outnumbered. And again, it's so evident, people. It is so evident when we look at the behavior, when we look at how the Alberts and the McCabe's and Higgins behaved after the fact. It is so, to me, they proved their own guilt with their own solidarity. And despite the evidence, despite the damning evidence against them, they still stick together. That's exactly what they did that night when they killed John O'Keefe. They stuck together. Really fucked up, really shitty. And again, I wouldn't want anything to do with these people. They are toxic and psychopathic as fuck.
She is a chat moderator here and also with Miss Shorty. So let's get her up on stage here. Jessica, how you doing, my friend?
Hi, Jessica.
I'm all right. Hi, the Glare. How are you?
You could just call me Will. It's fine.
Well, actually, you're kind of on my poop list because I live in Chicago and could have gotten you really sick tickets for Riot Fest and had no clue that you were here until I saw your giddy face with Turtle Boy in the car while he was talking to Howard Carr. So you're on my poop list, but there's always next year.
I mean, if you follow me on Instagram, you would have known that I was live on Instagram a lot.
Listen, the amount of times I get on Instagram is not very many. I need to though, but from now on, I'll follow you on Instagram and yeah. Anyway, but it's nice to meet you. So sorry about me not being on the video. As I told DJ, this weekend's been kind of a crazy one for me. Unfortunately, I flushed one of my AirPods down the toilet. You know, just one thing after another.
Not figuratively, literally, Will. All right.
I get it. Like, that's actually one of my fears. When the camera phone first came out, Metro PCS put them out. I had one, and I paid a ridiculous amount of money for it, and I had it on a belt clip, and I was at this club at Churchill's at a show in Miami, this place called Churchill's, and it's known, part of it's known for how dingy the bathroom is. Like, it's just, I mean, you need a tetanus shot going in there. It might be because it might be the reason why my immune system is amazing right now.
She said, "Oh, is it sticky?" And I know exactly what she's talking about. I've been to shows and concerts where the bathrooms are fucking sticky. Your fucking shoes are sticking to the ground. It hasn't been cleaned in like years.
It might just be is hanging out in that bathroom so much. But I went to go pee and then the thing fell off the belt clip right into the toilet. So now ever since then, and that was like 20 years ago. Ever since then, I keep my phone way over here when I'm peeing. Like, I'm too scared.
You need a phone holder, like.
Yeah. So I'll never use AirPods for that reason because they're just two little things. I'm like, yeah, I'll lose one of them, guaranteed. Yeah.
The amount of lost AirPods I've had, and I actually tried to find my AirPod after I flushed it, thinking that I could just mess with the plumbing or whatever. Yeah, no, it was long gone. It was probably underneath my neighbor's house by that point.
I've lost at least 2 sets, but yeah. Anyway, my friend, what is your question for Will the Glare? Who we still want to the genesis of that name was what? The Glarer.
Because
someone in the chat asked this question.
Oh man, I've told this story before, but I was in a real bad place at one point. Like I had a really bad mental health crisis, put it that way. And I was just in bad shape, no sense of how to manage it whatsoever. And then I got suicidal. And I mean, rock bottom. Like I was done. I was ready to go. I was at peace with it and everything. But I told a loved one, I felt guilty not saying goodbye to certain people. And then, of course, my loved ones intervened. And then it was like I was in a position where it was like, all right, well, I'm either going to there's nowhere lower to get than this. So I'm either just going to die or, I'm going to go through with this, or I'm going to, for the sake of my loved ones who actually, made me feel as though I was, worth saving. I was going to put in some work. And while I was in this place, mandatory for like 10 days, I came up, I started just focusing like on, okay, what do I need to do to manage this, to get better? What are, yeah. And so that's my, it's an acronym, and I start.
I'm just going to read the chat someone provided. The Glarer: gratitude, logic, awareness, acceptance, accountability, rationality, empathy, resilience. That's really deep. Yeah. And I've told a few people, but I too reached several low points in my life. I've had reoccurring instances of really bad mental health and yeah, suicidal ideations. I've been there. So I commend him for sharing his story, and what a powerful acronym, the Glare: gratitude, logic, awareness, acceptance, accountability, rationality, empathy, and resilience. Absolutely. Those are all skills that if you exercise them and if you practice each and every one of those things, it will improve your mental health, and it will improve the people you choose to surround yourself with as well. And actually, the pursuit of truth and the pursuit of justice itself, if you choose to not be a hypocrite in your pursuit of justice, then it will make you a better person too. Because as I've said, as we are all seeking the truth in this Karen Reed case, in this John O'Keefe case, as we are all seeking the truth, we have to also look at the actions of the culprits. And they were violent, they were psychopathic, they were cold, and they refused to be held accountable for their atrocities. And they don't have empathy. They don't have empathy for John O'Keefe. They don't have empathy for the O'Keefe family. They don't have empathy for Karen Reed or her family. They don't have empathy for Aidan Kearney or his family. So, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm speaking to you guys as well. Like, be in pursuit of the truth and be in pursuit of justice, but also look at yourself. Don't be a hypocrite. Be part of the solution, be part of progress, of going forward with gratitude, awareness, acceptance, and I'd also like to say integrity. Have strong footing in integrity. Own your shit, own what you do, the things you say, that your actions, own all of it. Don't gaslight. Be real. Keep it real with yourself. And if you don't like what you're doing, then change. If you don't like certain things about yourself, if certain things about yourself are things that you can't be at peace with, then change. Just change. Just be a better person, like right now. You don't even have to wait till tomorrow. You can do it right now. Because being better people is how we create better circumstances for ourselves, for people around us, and for our communities. And that spreads. Let progress and love and empathy, let that spread. And make sure that you yourself are a demonstration of all of that. It's like that expression, be the change. And I'm not saying we all need to be perfect. Every single person on this planet is fallible. Every single one of us. We all make mistakes. But learn from the atrocities of others and choose not to be atrocious. Choose not to be a douchebag. Choose not to be like the McCabe's and the Alberts and Higgins. Learn from their assholery. And learn through the suffering of others, learn through your own suffering. If it didn't make you feel good, and if it doesn't make you feel good, then don't do it to someone else.
Been thinking about, and I wrote these things down. And ever since, honestly, ever since I started, this is for me. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. That's just something that worked for me. You asked me what the origin of the name is, and this is it. I'm not trying to be preachy or tell anybody what to do. Nothing. Just, but ever since I adopted this and started really applying those things into my everyday decision making, and how I look at myself, I have attracted nothing but good things in my life. So it's pretty amazing. Like I went from feeling completely and totally worthless, just like a bag of skin, and like totally empty, to now feeling like I seeing what kind of value I can contribute.
I skipped a bit so that we could get to the more crucial points I wanted to discuss with you guys.
As the wonderful, the amazing,
you need
Olivia
Olivia.
Lambo.
Yeah, you need her for that, because I'm
No,
not gonna
no,
be
no.
able to
That's
lead
not where we're
that
going.
conversation.
That is. I'm setting the table right now because
It makes sense when it's explained to me, but
Yeah.
I couldn't begin to explain it again.
No, we're not.
no
we're
way.
not going there. I'm setting the table for what I am going to ask you. So for Olivia Lambo, the hash values just means they could tell if the hash values are missing, then they don't have a complete extraction of their cell phone because there are entries in there that are missing hash values. And that's
Okay.
where, her deleted, that like a full forensic extraction. She said there's going to be a unique identifier with each and every text, phone call, every operation, the Google search, there'll be a hash value. When you're missing that, then that means someone has scrubbed something from that phone. And that's what
Right.
they gave to the defense. Now, that's not what I want to ask you guys about with the thought experiment. I'm going to ask you guys to dissect words and apply them to my hypothesis. And then maybe there's more of a thumbs up. Maybe there's a thumbs down. Maybe there's no, this is complete BS, TJ. All right. There's an individual, like I said, shocking as it is, a wonderful soccer mom, loving mom, Googles Haas long, or in this case, how long to die in cold. So now we have to from those words, try to figure out why would somebody Google that? What does that mean? So let me go to Will, and then let me go to Jess with that. Go ahead, Will.
Because they're panicked and they're stupid. And people do stupid things when they panic.
But what does the words mean? What are those words? Why those words? Dissect those words.
It means to me that she was aware that he was put out in the lawn and it was cold, and she thought that if he wasn't dead, he was near death, and was expecting for him to die out in the cold.
To me, she made that search at 2:27 a.m. because she wanted to know how long it would take for John O'Keefe to die in the cold before she called 911. Again, the McCabe's and the Alberts and Higgins were all protecting each other. They did not want John O'Keefe to survive his wounds.
For what reason?
I don't know. Again, I have no idea. To protect someone, obviously, but who, I have no idea.
Well, they're not going to protect Brian Higgins. He's not part of the family. I mean, I don't think they give a shit about Brian Higgins. So they kept going to these extraordinary lengths to try to say that Colin was not in the house. That became a point of contention.
As much as I love DJ, I disagree with him. I think that there is absolutely a possibility they are protecting Brian Higgins. To me, I kind of agree with Will the glarer in this, in that Brian Higgins may have had a bigger motive here than Colin Albert or the McCabe's and the Alberts protecting Colin Albert. Both motives are significant. Both motives are compelling. The motive that they're protecting Colin Albert because he did this, or the motive that they're protecting Brian Higgins because he did this. It could very well be that Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, and Colin Albert were all participants in the wounds. They were all the cause of John O'Keefe's wounds. So I'm just saying, I would not eliminate Brian Higgins like DJ, I think he just did.
He is not blood to them. He is another dude who's who's a friend of Brian Albert's, who works in the town. He is not precious. They would never say the word love and apply it to Brian Higgins, but they might to Colin Albert. Jess, what is your take? What do those words mean?
Well, my excitement overnight is when I deep dive into digital forensics and OSINT and geofencing and surveillance and data privacy and such. I firmly believe that the tooth, Googled that for sure. Just another typical dumb alleged criminal making a slip up mistake, thinking that they'd be able to cover their tracks. No matter what you type in your phone, anything that you type in your phone is registered, regardless. I think that they were just trying to figure out when that they could put him out on the lawn, time wise, to see how long it takes for the body to cool down, so that their story could develop around that. To be honest,
They're just the thing is if I have to have a reason why I want to know how long it would take somebody to die in the cold. It's not a random search. So we have all this chaos going on in the house. Will is alluding to that. People are panicking, perhaps except Brian Albert, because maybe he's a sociopath. Who knows? But in that search, I'm going to conduct that search and use those words for a specific reason. I'm trying to figure out what that reason is. Why do you want to know how long it's going to take him to die in the cold? The only reason I can come up with is that if for some reason he survives, he is going to ID someone. Someone is fidgeting with paper in the background. Please go to mute. Okay.
Not me.
Jessica, we'll put you in the Chicago Blackhawks penalty box. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So if that's the case, if he wakes up, he's going to ID somebody that struck him in the back of the head, someone that made that blow that was going to kill him. Not the punches to his eyes, not the punches that he obviously blocked with his hands, not where he probably got hit in the nose. He is going to tell someone struck me in the back of the head with an object big enough and hard enough, metal, that left a gash in my head. And we only have 3 choices of people that could be. That could be Brian A, that could be Brian H, or that could be Colin. And they've gone to extraordinary lengths. Even if it was Brian Albert, they're still going to
I just want to chime in and say that it could also be Kevin Albert. No one said anything about Kevin Albert being there. But again, we're talking about liars. We are talking about the McCabe's, who are liars, the Alberts, who are liars, Brian Higgins, who is a liar, a beta male, and a liar. Could Kevin Albert have been there? I think there's a huge possibility that Kevin Albert was there.
They're still going to collect a pension. Brian Albert already is. It's not that he was. I mean, he never went back to work, according to McDonough after this. So the only one who's vulnerable, who it would ruin his life, or what the remainder of his life is Colin. I've never thought a lot about Colin Albert until you posted those videos. And then I said, oh, so he was there. And everybody keeps trying to deny that he was there. Why would they do that? Because he would have been charged with, he would have been ID'd by John if John survived.
I mean, that's sure. That's a sound theory, but
it's a theory, a hypothesis. Right. That's it.
Sure.
I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying this. I'm trying to put forth a hypothesis because I know there has to be a motive for murder. I do not believe that Brian Albert and Brian Higgins set out to murder John O'Keefe. I just don't believe it. There's no way. So they just wanted to beat his ass. That Brian Higgins wanted to beat his ass. And then something happened that shifted the paradigm in that damn house.
I think they liked John and wanted to more or less initiate him into their little circle of grab-assing and tough guyness, and whatever was going on. I don't know. But something more than just beating his ass is there because they beat him to death. They left him out on the lawn to freeze. So it to me, there's something more than just a hazing going on here. There's something. I mean, you consider Brian Albert, you consider Chris Albert, you consider the salaries that some of these Massachusetts state police officers are making, these Canton police officers are making. There's again, man, like it stinks, So the answer to 99 out of 100 questions is money. And when you see those very high salaries, you see very little money going into methods of investigation. Basic preservation of evidence and handling of evidence. I mean, these things, but you see these cops are making insane amounts of money. Mm-hmm. And to do what? You know what I mean? So
clearly not investigate.
Right. So they're not being paid to be good cops, So, and then you have the Alberts, Chris Albert on the select board. You've got them fighting tooth and nail to against a police audit. They're scared. So people's pockets are getting lined here. The question is, did that have something to do with John O'Keefe's death and cover-up? And that makes sense to me because, again, why wouldn't anybody just help him? Why wouldn't they just say, hey, we were screwing around and he fell and, you know what I mean?
I've been saying this for weeks, Will. That is exactly what I've been saying for weeks. And it's not until I saw your videos that I came up with a reason. I'm like, Brian, why didn't you just call 911?
What I get out of those videos is that John O'Keefe was in the house. Yes. I'm not focused.
I will leave the link in the description below. This is a 2-hour-long live stream. So I will leave the link to the original video in the description below if you would like to watch it. But I just want to end it here by saying that, rational, compassionate people with a conscience who knew that John O'Keefe sustained a fatal injury, they would have called 911. They would have called somebody to come and pick him up and bring him to the hospital, or they would have taken him to the hospital themselves. I may have even taken him to the hospital myself. You know what I mean? Like, just, we got to go right now. We can't even wait for the ambulance. We got to go right now. But I'm saying, like, it, even say they did not intend to kill him. Say that they just intended to beat his ass. Because he sustained a fatal injury to his skull, it doesn't matter if they did not intend to kill him. If he would have died from his wounds, as a result of them beating his ass, they would all be held responsible. They would all face criminal charges. They might have all been charged with homicide. So that's another element to this, that again, they were all protecting each other. But even in that moment, even in that scenario, that the opportunity they had to save his life, as I've said in a previous video, that they had the opportunity to mitigate the situation, to save his life, to lessen his suffering by just bringing him somewhere where he could receive medical attention. They didn't know if he was going to die. Maybe they didn't know if he was going to die if they did that. They didn't know if by bringing him to the hospital to be saved, okay, just think about it, people. They have the opportunity to save John O'Keefe's life. They just got done beating him up. He sustained a fatal wound. They know he is still alive. He is still breathing. Karen Reed herself said he was still alive. He was still breathing. And because they are so focused on protecting themselves, the McCabe's and the Alberts and Higgins, because they are so focused on protecting themselves, they don't want the uncertainty of not knowing if he's going to live or die. They don't want to risk bringing him to the hospital or getting someone to take him to the hospital. They don't want to risk that because he could survive his wounds. He could have survived his wounds. Some people have survived worse accidents, worse trauma, physical trauma than John O'Keefe. I've seen it. I've seen lots of documentaries. Some people survived far worse wounds than John O'Keefe had. He very well could have survived his wounds. Remember, it was the hypothermia that killed John O'Keefe. His body was too cold. But think about being the Alberts and the McCabe's and Higgins. If you know that you were responsible for some or all of John O'Keefe's wounds, and you know he needs medical attention right now, but you don't want to get in trouble because you only wanted to beat him up. You didn't want to kill him. You only wanted to beat him up. Think about it. Like a psychopath, someone who is selfish and more concerned about their own freedom, more concerned about their own ability to enjoy their life. They're not going to want John O'Keefe to go to the hospital. They're not going to want to risk John O'Keefe surviving his wounds. That is why no one, absolutely no one, called 911 when they could have. There was a crucial point that they should have called 911. And not one person inside 34 Fairview bothered to call 911. Not even Jennifer McCabe when she went back to her house. Everybody had a fucking cell phone, and not one person did the right thing because they were all protecting each other. The right thing would have been, holy shit, we fucked up, but we need to save his life. And if we all go to prison for it, even though we didn't mean to do this, even though we didn't mean for it to get out of hand, like, so be it, because we fucking did this. That's the right thing to do when you fuck up that bad. But not only do they fuck up, they try to fuck up other people's lives on top of it. They try to frame Karen Reed for all of it. They do the dirty work. They do the shitty fucked up things, and then they pin it on Karen Reed. They did the wrong thing over and over again that night and that morning. because they were more concerned about their own freedom, their selfish needs, their selfish desires, than they were about doing the right thing for John O'Keefe, for his family, for his niece and nephew who had already lost 2 parents in their life. And they certainly didn't care about Karen Reed or her family. They prioritized themselves and their own family above all others. Thank you for watching.